Fire Country is a show I literally never intended to watch. My parents are in their 60s and they love network TV. Every night at 7 p.m., no matter if I'm in the middle of the story, my mom says, "Gotta go, my show's on." I go and visit them about once a month. That's where I am right now. And I stay the night, but I know better than to interrupt their TV viewing. On April 25th, 2025, when I was in town to visit with my mom, I wanted to have a conversation with her about drama going on at work, and she wanted to watch Fire Country, so naturally we came to a truce. I would talk with her during the commercial breaks, and while she watched the show, I would play on my phone. So, while technically A Wind of Change, the first half of the two-part season 3 finale, is the first episode of Fire Country I watched, I usually consider the first episode I actually watched to be I Do It Again, the second half of the finale, because my attention wasn't fully locked in until the fight between Finn, Gabriella, and Audrey. I don't know, I guess the idea of someone being shot on just like regular network television was so captivating I had no choice but to watch. I immediately became like the worst person to watch TV with. In almost every scene, I had to ask my parents what was going on. Those commercial breaks that were supposed to be reserved for telling my mom about work drama became a chance to get more context for the show. I don't even fully remember watching that episode except for the ending. You see, growing up, one of my favorite shows was House MD, and my favorite episodes are the season 6 finale Help Me and the season 7 premiere Now What. In Help Me, House works a building collapse, loses a patient, and decides to go back on drugs. But before he takes them, his will they won't they love interest, Lisa Cuddy, comes to stop him and they officially get together. Their ensuing intimate scene was my favorite such scene for a decade. So when I saw Jake and some other random firefighter hold Bodhi back after watching Buena Vista collapse, all I could think was, man, I could write a gay version of Now What as Fire Country fanfic. That's right, everybody. I planned to write a Bodhi x Jake fanfiction. I apologize, my gaydar was pointed at the wrong Leone. But Fire Country is one of my mom's favorite shows, so when I told her that I wanted to start watching the show, she immediately said yes. I'm pretty sure we watched like the first 8 episodes in 2 days, and we definitely did other things in those 2 days too. It was just like we were either gone or we were watching Fire Country. When I got home, I did what any reasonable person would do. I signed up for a 7-day trial of Paramount Plus and binged all 52 episodes in a week. Quickly, I realized that shipping Jake and Bodhi was never going to work, but as someone who loves writing canon-compliant fan fiction, I had one choice, and that choice was Gabriella. So, after I watched I Do It Again for the second time, I put together a 2,300-word fan fiction called Lifelines about Bodhi deciding to relapse, then deciding to go to the emergency room under the guise of getting treatment for his knee, but actually to get more pills. Exact details of getting them back together would be worked out at a later time. After posting that, I started working on another fanfiction, this time giving Vince and Sharon a last kiss, because with Billy Burke reported to be out of the show, and no last kiss to be found in the season 3 finale, it seemed unlikely we were getting one. Once again, I put out a 2,600-word fanfiction, and even now, over 100,000 words of Fire Country fanfiction later, a friend of mine still says it's their favorite thing that I've ever written. Their second favorite thing that I've ever written is the story of how Vince told Sharon that he kissed another woman, and not entirely sure that one is canon compliant. One of the reasons I enjoy fanfiction as a hobby is that it's a bit like buying a pre-made deck of cards to play a card game. Some people really enjoy sitting down and learning how different cards work, building their own decks. Some people simply enjoy dueling. Building your own deck, to me, is like writing original fiction, and playing a pre-made deck is like fan fiction, skipping the building phase and going straight to the storytelling phase. We use the term canon to refer to the facts of a story. Think of it like cards in a deck. But in storytelling, the cards are things like characters or settings or themes. The beauty of using pre-made decks, like the beauty of fan fiction, is that you already have all those cards ready for you to use. You can just go have fun. If you don't like a card, or a part of the story, you can just throw it out and replace it with something else. But there is one exception, and that's canon-compliant fanfiction. That's more like taking the deck as given to you and just running with it, which certainly makes it seem like the easy way out, and it can be if you don't care about winning. As someone who played decks that my dad built for me, let me assure you it's a very easy way to get your ass kicked over and over again. That's not to say that people who play pre-made decks can't be successful. My younger brother spent hours and hours learning decks, studying how cards worked, and making my dad play him when dad got off work. The result? Even when playing at the top of my game with all the stars aligned, I would sometimes win a pack of cards at our local card shop, and my brother would win hundreds of dollars at regional tournaments. My brother worked at his craft during the week and performed on weekends. I wanted to have fun on Saturdays, but I was continuously frustrated by not winning. But looking back, well over a decade later, my dad was right. I just wasn't dedicated enough to compete at the same level that my brother was. I was a teenager who found fun in reading and watching television. I enjoyed writing, but my craftsmanship was kind of shoddy, and I didn't have the dedication to do that to the level I wanted to either. It wasn't until I was an adult that I had the discipline to sit down and work at something other than school or work with that needed level of intensity and intentionality, and that thing was writing canon-compliant fanfiction. I like writing canon-compliant fanfiction because it challenges me. You see, good canon-compliant fanfiction doesn't just refuse to contradict canon, I mean, that's a big part of it, but it also reads like something that plausibly could happen in canon. The characters sound like themselves and they react to events like themselves, even if the situation itself would never happen in canon. When I'm writing, I'm not just sitting at the computer making up stories. I'm watching the show, reading Reddit, trying to work out what happened in backstory, or take a small comment from a character about a past event and work out how it might have happened. Every deviation needs a justification. Every new theory needs hard evidence to back it up, and you better believe if my mom spotted even one thing out of place, she would let me know. What makes canon-compliant fanfiction difficult is that the larger the canon is, the more potential there are for conflicts. Like how Mickey arresting Bodhi is said to have taken place after Riley was lost, but the show is built on the idea that Bodhi was exiled by Vince the night Riley died. It isn't just the facts that have to be teased out, sometimes it's entire character motivations that must be solved. For example, one of the big things I had to figure out in the Fire Country universe was exactly why it is that Luke tries to close 3 Rock in Season 2. So, writing canon-compliant fanfiction requires lots and lots of rewatching. I don't just mean casual rewatching. I mean, I think I've watched the show 6 or 7 times, plus, my infinite number of watches of the Season 1 episodes Bad Guy and End of My Rope, because they are legitimately just my favorite episodes. As I cycled through these episodes over and over again, there were so many things that stuck out to me, including the Season 1 finale, what this entire video essay series is based off of me explaining. I can't tell you how long I spent trying to work out why nobody states the obvious middle ground. Maybe Bodhi relapsed over the stress of his impending release, where he's supposed to be going to go live with the man who is responsible for his sister's death, even if Bodhi doesn't blame him. Likewise, it seemed pretty much impossible to understand why Sharon just lets Jen go live with Jake in Season 2 after Vince nearly died. But we're not there yet. But, there weren't too many, so generally the show felt consistent to me. It was going to be a challenge, but it was a challenge I knew I was up for because I had done it before. You see, before I wrote over 100,000 words of Fire Country fanfiction, I wrote over 100,000 words of fanfiction specifically for Fantastic Beasts Secrets of Dumbledore. There were a couple of big problems that challenged me, and through about 6 or 7 rewatches of the movie, I figured out a satisfactory answer to the challenges. When the deleted scenes came out, I was basically proven correct. Not everyone agrees, but I don't see how you can watch those deleted scenes and not see what I see. The problem I'm going to cover in this video is a crucial one. Why was the German Minister for Magic, Anton Vogel, helping Grindelwald in his plan to be elected to the leader of the wizarding world? It is clear that Grindelwald is running a campaign, but not legally on the ballot, since, he's technically an escaped felon. Vogel fixes that by wiping away all of his charges, allowing him to stand on the ballot. Now, if you watch a Harry Potter YouTuber, they will tell you that Vogel was just a stooge, but that didn't feel right. When questioned by an advisor as to why he was planning to let Grindelwald on the ballot, Vogel said if he didn't let Grindelwald stand as a candidate, the people would revolt. That speech just felt too genuine to be words spoken to appease advisors. There had to be something more going on here. And so I went about watching the movie repeatedly, and I noticed things. During that letting Grindelwald on the ballot discussion, Vogel's aide, Henrietta, looks out over Grindelwald's crowd with satisfaction while Vogel and his two advisors look worried. In an earlier scene, our hero Newt catches Vogel in the hallway on the way to pardon Grindelwald. Newt passes on Dumbledore's message about doing the right thing, and Henrietta interrupts the conversation, telling Vogel it's time to go. Then she gives Newt a harsh look after Vogel is gone. As we gear up for the final battle in Bhutan, Vogel is pushed into the shadows while Grindelwald reanimates the corpse of an animal meant to pick the next leader. In that final battle, Henrietta takes the suitcase alleged to have the animal in it and destroys it. Then it came to me. Henrietta was the Grindelwald supporter, not Vogel. Vogel was merely trying not to get killed. A week or so after I figured this out, I was proven right. There was a 60-second deleted scene in which Vogel and Grindelwald meet in what I assume to be Grindelwald's study. This isn't a private meeting between the leader of a criminal organization and the puppet leader he's going to replace. Instead, Grindelwald walks in, having given a speech to dozens of loyal followers, with Vogel having been babysat by Grindelwald's right-hand woman, Vinda. It is made clear that this speech was an act of intimidation, a reminder of what Vogel had to lose if he tried to resist Grindelwald. Also, fun fact about Fantastic Beasts Secrets of Dumbledore, it is a queer franchise written by a TERF, and it reads like a queer franchise written by a TERF. And for the first time, I was seeing stories the way my brother saw those decks of cards. Just as he had learned how each card worked together, I had somehow, through closely looking at evidence, unraveled what this one piece of the story was trying to say. And honestly, I never expected that a deleted scene would prove me right. I thought this would always be something that I discussed with my friends, but here it was, on screen, absolute proof of the signs that I had read throughout the movie. And so that's why I felt confident that I could work through the little things in Fire Country, those contradictions. But in my days of watching Secrets of Dumbledore, I had 24 online friends in a group chat that had seen the movie just as many times as I had, and probably another 24 or so additional people to engage with on Reddit. Unfortunately, the Fire Country subreddit was filled with the same tired talking points. It wasn't a place where people worked through a deeper understanding of the show. It was a place people went to bitch about the show, and I had no room for that. I started out by trying to drag my best friend into it, but he had only watched a couple of episodes, and the things that I wanted to discuss were things that I'm intentionally keeping from him because I want him to enjoy those things as I did. So instead I came up with the idea, and then I decided to test it. I wanted to see if I could argue about the show with ChatGPT, if I could use it as part of a feedback loop. Now wait, before you click off, I was not using ChatGPT for knowledge of the show. In fact, I wouldn't recommend ChatGPT for using knowledge for anything. And even ChatGPT literally says not to use it this way. I had already watched the show at least 6 times by that point. Many episodes watched many more times than that. What I wanted to do was I wanted to test and see if I could change its mind about something. Not in a big, overarching ChatGPT gives you a different answer sort of way, but in a way where I could say, here are these 9 pieces of evidence. Do you agree that my take is correct? And it worked. Over the course of several weeks, I started using ChatGPT to start with. Every idea was pulled from my archive-like knowledge of the show built from all those rewatches, and sometimes I had to go back to rewatch scenes. I would come up with theories and then use examples to rigorously prove or disprove them. As I worked more and more, things started to fall apart. Pretty soon, theories started to fall into place, things built on each other. Major themes emerged that seemed to point to all these same conclusions. A couple of times I made theories that were so insane that I had to go into another AI model, in incognito mode in a different browser to make sure I wasn't crazy. It would start with a simple question, which was often answered in a way that disproved my theory. But as I brought more evidence, the AI model would eventually be like, yeah, your read is accurate. That's all well and good, but I thought that maybe I had found some secret subtext in the show that wasn't intended to be there. The real test was going to be what happened when I turned on the show and watched for these things. Maybe I would find that those scenes had been remembered wrong, or that the threads that I had drawn were so crazy that I was basically just gasping at straws. And that's where the crazy part happened. Things I had only theorized were happening in the first episode. They weren't hidden, they were plain as day. I'm a proud lover of season 2, and I hadn't even seen those first 7 episodes of season 1 in a while, but almost every theory I had about how the show worked was right there in those first 7 episodes. In one more check that I wasn't crazy, I skipped to the back of the show, the penultimate episode of season 1, Backfire. That is when I saw so many false promises, about one every 2 minutes, that I knew that I could not have just imagined something. I had seen what the show was always trying to say, but no one, myself included, had ever heard. Everything that happens in those last 4 minutes of the season 1 finale, I know it seems impossible, was planned out and seeded all the way through the season, leading up to the big reveal. What I realized actually when I was writing this essay is that Fire Country isn't just a show with a really clear story and character arcs. Fire Country itself is built just like a deck of cards. Each player has a clear, defined role, and when everything is put together, it's like the writers are playing a match of cards with us every season. There are 3 games in a round of cards, and in Fire Country Season 1, there are 3 clear arcs. You're probably expecting that in the next essay, I'm going to start launching right into how these cards work, how each character works in the series, and how that builds into the season 1 finale. And that is what most of the essays in this series are going to be about. But first, I need to explain how the game is played. You see, a card game is not just about the cards. I mean, yes, those are the very important part of it, but you have to understand the rules of the game to be able to play. And Fire Country has a very specific way in which it is played. So if you want to see how that game is played, how Fire Country runs its show, and what all of the characters and settings do in this game, go ahead and subscribe because I'll be laying that out in the next video.